The storm arrived without warning, as it always did on the frontier world of Kepra 9. The sky turned the color of bruised steel, and the wind screamed across the rocky plains like something alive and angry. Dust and ice mixed together, cutting visibility down to only a few steps ahead. Most people were already sealed inside their habitats long before the first thunder rolled. Evan Cole was late. He had stayed out longer than he should have, repairing a damaged sensor pole near the edge of the colony's power grid. Life on Kepra 9 was never gentle, and mistakes were paid for quickly. As the wind pushed against him, Evan pulled his coat tighter and began moving toward his small shelter, a reinforced structure half buried into the ground. That was when he saw her. At first, he thought the storm was playing tricks on his eyes. A shape lay ahead, barely visible through the swirling dust. He stopped, squinting, heart beating faster. No one was supposed to be outside during a storm like this. It was suicide. He moved closer, shielding his face with his arm. The shape was human. A woman curled on her side, her clothes torn and coated with dust and frost. Her skin looked pale, almost gray in the weak emergency lights flickering from distant towers. "Hey!" Evan shouted, though the wind nearly stole his voice. "Can you hear me?" She did not respond. Without thinking further, he knelt beside her. She was alive. He could see her chest rise and fall, shallow but steady. Her skin was cold, far too cold. If he left her here, she would not survive the storm. Evan hesitated only for a moment. Frontier rules were simple. You help when you could, because one day you might be the one lying in the dust. He lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost fragile. As he carried her toward his shelter, she stirred slightly, letting out a soft sound that might have been a word or a warning. Inside the shelter, the air was warm and dry. Evan laid her gently on his narrow bed and activated the emergency heater. The lights hummed to life, casting a soft glow over the small room. His home was simple: a bed, a table, storage crates, and a small cooking unit. It was not meant for guests, but it would have to do. He removed her outer coat carefully, replacing it with one of his thermal blankets. Her face was delicate, with sharp cheekbones and dark lashes resting against her skin. She looked human in every way that mattered. As the heater worked, color slowly returned to her cheeks. Evan stepped back, rubbing his hands together to warm them. He had seen plenty of strange things since leaving Earth, but this was new. A woman appearing alone in the middle of a death storm raised questions he was not sure he wanted answered. Hours passed. The storm howled outside, battering the shelter like an angry beast. Evan stayed awake, sitting in a chair near the bed. Every now and then, the woman shifted slightly, her brow furrowing as if troubled by dreams. Near dawn, she finally opened her eyes. She gasped and tried to sit up, panic flashing across her face. Evan moved quickly but calmly, raising his hands. "Easy," he said softly. "You're safe. You were outside during the storm. I brought you here." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in every detail with sharp focus. When her gaze landed on him, she froze. Fear flickered in her eyes, deep and raw. "You're human," she said slowly. Evan frowned. "Last time I checked." She swallowed, then forced herself to relax. "Thank you, I didn't think anyone would find me." "You shouldn't have been out there," he replied. "Storm like that kills fast." "I know," she said quietly. "I didn't have a choice." He nodded, accepting the answer without pushing. People on frontier worlds learned early that some questions were dangerous. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated just a little too long. "Lyra." "Evan," he said. "You can stay until the storm clears." Relief crossed her face, but beneath it something else lingered. Fear, yes, but also something sharper, more controlled. As the day went on, Lyra regained her strength quickly. Too quickly, Evan thought. By midday, she was walking around the shelter, examining everything with careful curiosity. She asked questions about human tools, human food, and how long Evan had lived alone. She avoided one thing entirely: the small medical scanner mounted on the wall. When Evan offered to check her for injuries, she stepped back at once. "I'm fine," she said, her voice tense. "Please, no scans." He raised an eyebrow but did not argue. "Your choice." They shared a simple meal. Lyra ate slowly as if every bite was unfamiliar. She watched Evan when she thought he wasn't looking, studying the way he moved, the way he spoke, the way he relaxed in his own space. As night fell, the storm finally weakened, though the wind still whispered across the plains. Power flickered but held. "There's only one bed," Evan said awkwardly. "I can sleep in the chair." Lyra looked at the bed, then at him. "No, you saved me, we share." It was said simply, without embarrassment or invitation. Evan hesitated, then nodded. On Kepra 9, warmth was survival. They lay side by side, separated by a careful distance at first. The shelter creaked softly around them. Evan stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. Hours passed. At some point, the distance between them disappeared. Whether from cold or instinct, Lyra shifted closer, her hand brushing his arm. Evan did not pull away. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone. Just before sleep claimed him, he felt her lean closer. Her breath was warm against his ear. "Evan," she whispered. "Yeah." There was a long pause, too long. "I need you to listen carefully," she said, her voice barely louder than the hum of the heater. "What I am about to tell you cannot ever leave this room." His heart began to race. "Okay. I look human," she continued, each word measured. "I sound human, but I am not." Evan turned slightly, confused. "What do you mean?" Lyra closed her eyes. Her grip on his arm tightened, not in fear but in resolve. "I am not from your species," she whispered. "And if anyone else discovers me, they will kill me, and possibly you too." The storm outside faded into silence. Evan lay awake, staring into the darkness, realizing that the quiet of his life had just ended, and the galaxy had stepped into his bed. Evan did not sleep after her confession. He lay still, his body tense, staring into the dark while the heater hummed softly. Lyra stayed close beside him, her breathing slow and controlled, but he knew she was awake too. The truth she had whispered pressed against his thoughts, heavy and unreal, not human. On Kepra 9, that truth could mean many things: smugglers, shapeshifters, refugees from erased worlds, or something far worse. Slowly, Evan shifted onto his side and looked at her. In the dim light, she still looked completely human, the same face, the same eyes, the same warmth. "You should explain," he said quietly. Lyra nodded. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, as if the words themselves were cold. "My species is called the Velari," she began. "We evolved far from human space. Our bodies learned how to survive by becoming what we needed to be." Evan listened without interrupting. "We can adapt," she continued. "Not with machines, with biology. When we observe another species long enough, we can copy them perfectly. Skin, organs, even voice patterns." Evan swallowed. "Shapeshifters." "Yes," Lyra said softly. "That is what the galaxy calls us. That is why the galaxy fears us." She turned to face him fully now. "We are not invaders, we never were, but others believed we could replace them, steal their worlds, so they decided to erase us first." Evan thought of the empty plains outside, the silence that stretched for miles. He knew what fear could drive people to do. "How many of you are left?" he asked. "Very few," Lyra replied. "Those who survived scattered, we hide, we pretend, we run. And you ended up here." "Yes." Morning came slowly. Pale light slipped through the reinforced window as the storm clouds finally broke apart. Outside, the world looked calm again, as if nothing terrible had happened. Evan sat up and rubbed his face. "Why tell me?" Lyra looked down. "Because you saved me. And because you deserve the truth before the danger reaches you." As if summoned by her words, a sharp tone suddenly echoed inside the shelter. The proximity alarm. Evan froze. "That shouldn't." He jumped out of bed and rushed to the console near the door. The display lit up, showing a scanning pattern sweeping across the plains, a patrol ship. Lyra was on her feet instantly. Fear flashed across her face, sharp and urgent. "They're looking for me." "Who?" Evan asked. "The Coalition," she said. "They hunt Velari." Evan's mind raced. Coalition patrols rarely flew this far out unless they had a reason. "How close?" he asked. "Too close." The scanner pulse grew stronger, brushing against the shelter's outer shielding. Evan cursed under his breath. His shelter was old, barely legal. It would not stand up to a direct scan. "They'll detect you?" he asked. "Yes," Lyra said, "unless I leave now." She grabbed her torn coat, moving toward the door. Evan stepped in front of her without thinking. "No," she stared at him. "Evan, you don't understand. If they find me here, they will accuse you of hiding me. Humans are tolerated, not trusted." "I understand enough," he replied. "You won't survive out there." "I might," she said. "You definitely won't if you help me." Evan looked at the scanner again. The patrol ship was circling, searching. He clenched his jaw. "Get away from the scanner," he said suddenly. "What?" "The med scanner," he repeated. "It's linked to my power grid. If I reroute—" He moved fast, fingers flying across the console. Years of fixing broken tech had taught him how systems failed, and how to make them fail on purpose. The shelter lights flickered. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked, panic rising. "Making noise," Evan said. "Human noise." He overloaded the scanner's output and redirected the signal upward, sending a chaotic burst of electromagnetic interference into the sky. To the patrol ship, it would look like a damaged human settlement throwing off bad data. The Coalition hated messy readings. They preferred clean scans. The patrol ship paused. The scanning pattern shifted away slightly. Lyra stared at Evan. "You're hiding me." "Looks like it," he said. The patrol ship lingered for several tense minutes, then slowly moved on, its scanners pulling back toward the upper atmosphere. Only when the signal faded did Evan finally relax. Lyra sank onto the bed, shaking. "You should not have done that." "Too late," Evan replied. "They'll come back now anyway. Suspicious readings draw attention." She looked up at him. "Why help me?" he shrugged. "Because you were freezing in the dust. Because you trusted me. Because someone decided your species didn't deserve to live." He paused. "And because I don't like bullies, even galactic ones." Silence filled the shelter. From that moment on, everything changed. Evan stopped going into the colony proper. He shut down non-essential systems. He taught Lyra how to move quietly, how to avoid leaving patterns that scanners might pick up. In return, she taught him how Velari senses worked, how she could feel energy shifts in the air, how she knew when danger was near. She adapted quickly, too quickly. Evan noticed it in small things, how she learned human habits in days, how she understood machines after watching him only once, how she sometimes knew what he was going to say before he said it. One evening, as they shared another simple meal, Evan finally asked, "Can you read my mind?" Lyra smiled faintly. "No, we are not monsters." "Good," he said, "just checking." Despite the danger, something quiet and steady grew between them. Trust, companionship, the comfort of not being alone in a hostile world. But the galaxy did not forget easily. 3 days later, the proximity alarm sounded again. This time, it did not stop. Multiple signals appeared on the display. Ground units, drones, a full sweep. "They've narrowed it down," Evan said grimly. Lyra closed her eyes. "I can run, distract them." Evan shook his head. "They'd catch you." He looked around his shelter, then smiled slowly. "This world is hostile," he said, "but it's hostile to everyone." He activated an old mining system buried beneath the shelter, something left over from a failed extraction project. The ground outside trembled as dormant machinery came back to life. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked. "Turning the terrain against them," Evan replied. Coalition drones descended, scanning, probing. The ground beneath them suddenly collapsed as Evan triggered controlled sinkholes. One drone vanished into the dust. Another slammed into rock as sudden wind currents shifted. Ground units advanced carefully, weapons ready. Then the storm returned. Not a natural one. Evan had rerouted power into atmospheric disruptors, ancient tech meant to protect early colonies. Dust rose into the air, thick and blinding. Sensors failed. Communication signals broke apart. Lyra watched in awe. "You planned this." "No," Evan said honestly. "I adapted." The coalition forces retreated, regrouping outside the storm zone. They had expected an easy hunt. They had underestimated a human who knew his world. As silence returned once more, Lyra turned to Evan, her eyes shining with something new. "Respect, humans are not what the galaxy believes," she said. Evan gave a tired smile. "Neither are you." Far above them, the coalition ship remained in orbit, watching, learning, and preparing to return. The silence after the storm felt heavier than the storm itself. Evan stood near the small window, watching the pale sky. The dust clouds were thinning, but far above, a faint glimmer remained. The coalition ship was still there, hidden behind layers of atmosphere and distance. It had not left. It was waiting. Lyra felt it too. She sat on the edge of the bed, her posture calm but tense. Her senses reached beyond what human eyes could see. The danger had not passed, it had only paused. "They are learning," she said quietly. "They will not make the same mistakes again." Evan nodded. "Figures." He turned away from the window and began checking equipment. Power levels, backup systems, old weapons that were never meant to be used in real combat. Everything he had was worn, outdated, and barely holding together. "This place won't survive another full sweep," he said. "Not if they come down hard." Lyra stood and walked to him. "Then I should leave." He stopped moving. "No," he said firmly. "Evan," she replied, her voice gentle. "You've already done more than any human ever would. If I run, they will follow me instead of you. That is how this ends." He looked at her then, really looked at her, not as a secret, not as a threat, but as someone who had shared his shelter, his food, his silence. "You didn't choose to be hunted," he said. "And I didn't choose to live quietly while someone else decides who deserves to exist." She searched his face. "They will come with force, soldiers, weapons you cannot match." Evan smiled slightly. "The galaxy always thinks that." The next day, the colony received a broadcast. Coalition authority symbols filled the screen in the communal channel. A calm, cold voice spoke in perfect human language. "This region is under temporary security control. All residents are ordered to report any suspicious activity. Harboring non-registered species will result in immediate sanctions." Evan shut the channel off. "They are setting the stage," he said, "making it legal." Lyra's expression darkened. "They will use humans to hunt me." "Not all of them," Evan replied. He packed a small bag and handed it to her. Inside were supplies, a compact power cell, and a communicator. "What is this?" she asked. "A choice," he said. "If things go wrong, you run, no arguing." She took the bag but did not move. "And you?" "I'll be busy." The coalition strike came at dusk. Dropships broke through the clouds, descending with mechanical precision. Armored units spread across the plains, scanners sweeping, weapons ready. They moved straight toward Evan's shelter. "They know," Lyra whispered. Evan activated the last phase of his plan. Across the region, old systems came alive. Mining beacons, weather stabilizers, emergency transmitters long forgotten. Signals flooded the air, overlapping and conflicting. To coalition sensors, it looked like chaos. Evan stepped outside. The wind picked up, carrying dust and static. He stood alone in front of his shelter as the first units approached, weapons raised. "Human," a coalition officer called out through an amplifier. "Step aside. We are conducting an authorized operation." Evan raised his hand slowly. "This is my land." "You are harboring a Velari," the officer replied. "Surrender it." Evan laughed softly. "You traveled across space for one scared woman hiding in a storm. That says more about you than her." The officer's voice hardened. "Last warning." Evan tapped the communicator clipped to his collar. Across the colony, every channel lit up. A message played, not just audio, visual data, records, evidence. images of Velari worlds before they burned, testimonies from survivors. Coalition orders marked classified, proof of extermination. The truth spread faster than the coalition could stop it. Humans watched in silence. Miners, technicians, families, people who had lived under coalition protection without ever asking the cost. The officer froze. "Shut that down." Too late. Evan spoke clearly, his voice carried by every transmitter he controlled. "You told us they were dangerous. You told us they were monsters. You never told us they were refugees." Coalition units hesitated. Human contractors lowered their weapons. Behind Evan, the shelter door opened. Lyra stepped out. Gasps spread through the ranks as she allowed her disguise to fade partially. Her eyes shifted, glowing faintly. Her skin shimmered, no longer fully human. "I am Velari," she said. "I have harmed no one. I only wanted to live." The coalition officer raised his weapon. A human soldier stepped in front of it. "No," the soldier said. "Not like this." More followed. Coalition command crackled with angry orders, but control was slipping. Humans were not obedient tools. Not when shown the truth. The officer backed away slowly. "This is not over," Evan nodded. "It never is." The coalition forces withdrew, not in defeat but in shock. Their authority had cracked. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed quietly. The story spread beyond Kepra 9. Other colonies began asking questions. Other Velari survivors began emerging from hiding, seeking out human worlds. Not because humans were the strongest, but because they chose to stand. Lyra and Evan watched a transport lift off from the plains, carrying Velari refugees toward safety. "You've made enemies," Lyra said softly. Evan smiled. "I had those already. Now I have friends too." She looked at him, something warm and steady in her expression. "My people will remember this." "So will mine," he replied. That night they lay together once more, not hiding from the galaxy but facing it. Evan stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what he had done, and the strange peace that came with it. Somewhere out there, powerful forces would plan revenge. Laws would be rewritten. Battles would come. But the truth was out. And once humans decided someone was worth protecting, the galaxy would have to adapt, just like the Velari had, because humans did not need to be perfect. They only needed to choose.